Hello everyone, I am Christian Ross and I own Ross Title and Ross Law here in Naples, Florida. I want to do this video on buyer brokerage agreements and broker compensation. You know, there's a lot of lawsuits, there's a lot in the news on buyer brokerage agreements and basically how realtors are paid. And I wanted to just kind of go through it and give you my 2 cents, give you my strategy, and at the very least, explain the buyer brokerage agreements that are available here in Naples. Today we'll look specifically at the NABOR forms. There are two of them that I like, and I just want to dispel and kind of put at ease some of your thinking on this. I think it's a lot simpler than a lot of people believe it is. So we'll take a look at it. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, but this will be a shorter video, something that just kind of gets into it. And if you want, we can talk about it further if you reach out to me directly. All right, so here we've got the buyer agreement for broker compensation, and this is a pretty cool form. It is one page. It's as simple as it can be. And it does a great job of answering some of the concerns that were raised in the lawsuits recently. And these lawsuits have come down in pretty much every state in the country. We've seen them recently here in Florida. I saw them in Georgia. We obviously had some in Kansas in federal court. They're kind of all over, and we're going to see them for a while. So what can we learn from these lawsuits? There's a lot in these forms we could use to our advantage. So let's point it out. Buyer understands that the closing of the property purchased by buyer through broker services, broker may receive some of broker's compensation paid by the listing broker of any such property, and some of broker's compensation will be paid by buyer. That's kind of the main argument that these lawsuits have, that these buyers don't realize or didn't realize that their agent was being paid from the listing agent, which was then being paid by the seller. And so this does a great job of disclosing that right up front. Broker may receive some of its compensation paid by the listing broker. That's great. So now we've kind of checked the box. We've disclosed it. They can't really be upset with us later if we actually disclosed it. The next paragraph, it is agreed that at the closing of any property purchased by buyer through the broker services, buyer shall pay to broker the following sum. And they actually have a line here for the amount that you might put, you might charge. Now here in Naples, we'll actually see a transaction fee being added here. So let's say the brokerage charges $500 to a buyer as kind of like an admin transactional fee. You'd put this $500 here. Now what that means is that in the very least, the buyer is obligated to the $500. And I think this is an important disclosure and agreement between buyer and broker. And so now we've checked the box on two things. Number one, we've disclosed how the broker's getting paid, and two, what the buyer is obligated to pay in the very least. And then that third line, it is understood and agreed that the broker compensation shall be in addition to any brokerage compensation paid to broker by the listing broker of such property. So again, it's not one or the other in lieu of. This would be something that is an obligation. So this is a great form. You'll see here we've got signature lines after that. This is your simple agreement. I mean, honestly, I don't see how a buyer would fight you on this. This is an easy, put your toe in the water, starting to get your buyer to sign something. And it really checks the boxes for me. From a legal perspective, from a compliance perspective, I like this form. It's the least intimidating form that we have. I really like it, as you can tell. All right, so here is the next form. This is probably the one that people are more nervous about. This is the buyer broker exclusive agreement. And we'll go over kind of what people are nervous about. And that is actually, if we scroll down to this section, broker compensation. Broker shall receive compensation in the amount of, and you put in an amount, you put in either a percentage or you put in the actual flat fee. For each property purchased by buyer and or leasing compensation, so this would make sense if you were also doing a rental. Broker's compensation will be paid on any real estate purchase, placed under contract, leased, or optioned by buyer or any other person, entity. Broker's compensation, this is the next highlight, broker's compensation shall be deemed earned and fully payable upon the closing of title or buyer's right to occupy the property. And then the next one, if broker compensation is not paid in full by the seller or landlord's broker to broker under terms of any real estate compensation, broker will pay or assist, or buyer will pay or assist in ensuring that the broker compensation is collected from the seller or broker. If any compensation, so now we're saying, okay, this is what I'm paid, and if they don't pay me, the buyer will assist in achieving that. And then if you look in the orange highlight, if any compensation paid by seller or landlord to brokers exceeds the amount of broker's compensation set forth herein, broker shall be entitled to accept such excess compensation. And so we'll use that. That line is beautiful, actually. It probably relieves a lot of stress that some of the agents out there have about this form. And then finally, in green there, if any compensation paid by the seller to broker is less than the broker's compensation due broker, under this agreement, buyer shall pay the difference to broker at closing. Maybe that's the biggest challenge of this form. So let's back up just a minute. You could spend hours and hours and hours on this form, but here's the reality. You would put this in front of a buyer and say, look, this is our agreement. This is how I am paid. If I'm not paid, you're going to, by the listing agent, which is most common. That's what will happen in 99% of the deals. If I'm not paid by them, if they, try to force me out, you're going to help me get paid by them. You're going to assist. And that could be as simple as making sure that your name is on any offer that they make, whether it's to a builder or otherwise. And then finally, if I'm overpaid, if we put 3% on the top and the builder offers 4%, I get to keep the excess. That's what that orange line says. And then green, if I don't get paid enough, if I'm only paid 1% or nothing, then the buyer ultimately would be responsible for the difference. I don't see the problem in this, right? So I think the majority of buyers would understand this and say, okay, you deserve to get paid as well. You're going to work hard for me, finding the right property, negotiating offers, and most of the time the seller will pay you through the listing broker co-op. But if they don't, it would be on me. So then we, as the buyer, I'm thinking, well, what would be on me? All right, what's that amount that we put up at the top of this section 5? Ideally, we'd put 3%. Right, that's a very common amount, maybe 4%, maybe 8%, whatever your number is. You kind of want a higher number in there because that's what your services are worth. That's what your time is worth. So you're going to put a number that you expect to be paid. You're going to put a high number. And as a buyer looking at this, they want a low number, right? They want as little risk as possible. Put whatever number you guys agree to. That's the answer. So if you put 3 initially and they give you a hard time on it and they start negotiating, go down to 2. That's fine. If that's okay with you, if you want to go down to 1, that's okay. If I think I would put something more than 0, but whatever your number is, I would put that in there. And ultimately, it doesn't restrict you from collecting all of the listing co-op amount, right, per MLS or other agreement. That orange section says that you get the excess, but it does have a floor. It does say, well, if the seller won't pay commissions, if the buyer makes an offer without me and tries to cut me out of the deal, I can at least enforce my 1% or my 2% or whatever it is. This is a great form. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, yes, sign me up for this one. I will tell you, in other states that have similar forms, they're not as friendly to a buyer. This one's pretty friendly. This one, it allows a buyer's agent to keep a low amount and still protect themselves, from being able to collect the full amount of commission. Let's go back to the top. The other reasons I like this form. These are the areas that I like much better than just that simple one-pager. This would be the part that I personally would push you to using this form. It identifies what your relationship is, what your roles are, what the buyer's obligated to do on their side of things. So it has broker role, broker relationship, buyer role. I think this is really important. Anytime that you have two parties working with each other, identifying the role and the scope of services is key. I do that in my business. Anytime we have a new client, I send them a letter and I say, hey, this is what we're going to be doing for you, and this is what I need from you. It's very clear, back and forth. You guys deserve that. The buyer deserves that as well. If you look at this, I think it's very interesting. Broker is hereby retained to assist buyer in acquiring an interest in or right to use the property. Broker will. And so this is the broker's role. This is what they have to do. This is what you have to do. And I think it's a really good opportunity to review this. And all right, what is my job? What am I supposed to do here? So A, consult with buyer to discuss property requirements, financing alternatives, possession, time schedules, financing capabilities. Like, come on, let's talk. We need to make sure we're all on the same page. B, assist in obtaining available information. So what's on MLS, maybe reaching out to the listing agent, getting additional information, seeing what's online possibly. But basically, my job is to see what information is available. C, make brokers' best efforts to identify and locate properties suitable for purchase. So using, A and B, I'm then going to try my darndest to find you a suitable property. Seems reasonable. Assist buyer in presenting and negotiating contract offers, and monitor contract and closing deadlines. Buyer understands that other potential buyers may consider, make offers on, or purchase through broker the same or similar properties that buyers seeking to acquire. You might have other clients essentially. I think this is really invaluable information. It doesn't say we'll do a walkthrough for you, we'll give referrals, the things that tend to get us in a little bit more trouble when we operate outside of the boundaries of this role. I would say if you can keep your scope of services within these 5 things, then you're going to be really in good shape. Separately, the buyer has roles too. So the buyer must work exclusively with broker. So if you find out that the buyer's got 10 different realtors and he's using all of you at the same time, this contract would be important for you. This is your loyalty agreement. Hey, look, you weren't very forthright with me, and that was a very key part of this. Refer to broker all inquiries in the form of a source regarding potential properties for sale or lease. Hey, keep me in the loop. If a seller is going to reach out to you directly, let me know. Provide reliable information, including financial. Provide to broker general information regarding location and price range of amenities. And on all occasions, notify other brokers and third parties of the existence of this agreement. I kind of need you to tell me that, tell other people that we actually have a contractual relationship. They've got a couple other things. You can also be pretty flexible. Other terms and conditions. Right? If you have a buyer, if you're worried that a buyer is going to push back on you because they've never signed this before and I don't like all the shalls and the obligations, well, what are their concerns? Let's put in the other terms and conditions. I think having this form, even if we have to mark it up, even if we have to make changes to it, I think having it is better than not having it. For at least the roles, what we're supposed to do with each other. So you can obviously tell, I love these forms. And I believe that 12 other states in the country obligate realtors to use a form similar to this before working with a buyer. And I can only imagine that's going to come to all 50 states. And it's going to be something that we'll do no matter what. Now, the next question is, when? When do we do this? I think this is the biggest challenge that people have in adopting this new process is that, all my clients come from referrals and I'm not really interested in doing this with someone and I'll probably turn them off. I want them to use me. I don't want them to for me to scare them away that I'm going to bring them to court over this. And, It really doesn't have to be that way. Here's how it worked with me. When I went to buy a property, it was a referral to the agent, and he offered to show us around one day. I think we spent a couple hours looking at different neighborhoods across town. And, that was a really important thing. Do we like each other? Do we fit? Are we going to be honest and fair? And, is the buyer being realistic? For both of us, the realtor's feeling me out as much as I'm feeling them out. And at the end, at the last house, before we got in the car and went our separate ways, he had a folder for us, and he said, all right, in the left side is a standard contract. It's what we'll probably be offering on if you make an offer on something. Read it, call me if you have questions, but this is what you should expect to use. And on the right side of the form the right side of the folder is the Buyer Brokerage Agreement. He said, look, this is our agreement between the two of us, that we're going to work on the same page. Just so you know, I earn a commission on these sales. It's usually paid by the listing broker, but in the event it's not, there's terms in regards of if the seller is unwilling to pay a commission, how that works. And that was it. This quick, simple elevator pitch. And they said, if you have any questions, let me know, but otherwise sign that form and send it back to me at a later time. And then, we signed it, but let's say I hadn't signed it. Let's say I just, there was no pressure. But when I made my first offer, he included it in that offer. So you have the sales contract, all the terms, we signed it, and all right, here are all the disclosures you have to sign as well. Lead-based paint, seller disclosure, and the Buyer Brokerage Agreement. Maybe there were a couple others, I'm not sure, but that was in there. And I'd seen the form, it was pre-populated. I signed it. Of course I signed it. And the only other thing that he said to me at that time was, hey, look, if you want out of this agreement at any time, if you and I aren't getting along anymore, it's not going to work anyways, right? We'll tear it up. Don't even worry about it. It's not going to obligate you. This is just while we're working together, you're really only working with me. But if our relationship sours and you want to go hire someone else, this agreement is null and void already. It's already done. It's over. So you'll see that again in the form if you go over it. This is only for properties that broker is working with you on. It's not just everything, anything. It's like if you make a deal separately with a for sale by owner, technically, if the broker didn't point you in that direction, they're not obligated to it anyways. So I think these forms should be used. I think that they can easily be integrated into your process without upsetting clients, without ruining your business. And I think it protects the buyer and the seller. It's full disclosure. It's like, hey, look, as opposed to before when we didn't have these discussions, now we are having them. Now it's very clear where I got my commission from. It's very clear what happens if. And that's what contracts should be. What happens if? That way you and the buyer are on the same page. Now the last thing I'll say, if you have a buyer that refuses to sign either form, I think that's a red flag. And maybe you decide to continue doing business with them anyways, but with a little bit of reservation, right? If I have a buyer that straight refuses, doesn't agree that I should be paid a commission, that he should be obligated or she should be obligated, okay, I get it. I'm not going to fight you. In fact, here at the office, I have a motto, don't fight clients. We don't fight clients. But if I know they're going to fight with me on something, I can't treat them like every other client. I can't assume that they're being honest and open and upfront with me. They might be shopping it around. That's okay. It's more information. And it's more information for me to run my business, and I think you could do the same. If a buyer were really to give you a hard time, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. They're probably going to give you a hard time on a sales contract. They're going to give you a hard time on inspections. They're going to give you a hard time on all that stuff. And that's okay. It's just good to have that information up front. Really good to have that information up front. Okay, that's it. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out. Visit our website, rosstitle.com. We're here in Naples. We do closings throughout South Florida. But if you need my advice, I'd be happy to help you. I wish you luck, and I wish you success. Good luck, everyone.